The declaration of war arrived on a Tuesday, and that alone should have warned the galaxy that something had gone terribly wrong. Across Earth, the transmission punched through every channel at once: civilian networks, military bands, commercial holos, even a handful of dusty analog screens in forgotten corners of the world. A towering alien figure filled the airwaves, armored in layered obsidian plates etched with conquest glyphs. Behind it burned a rotating star map marked with thousands of extinguished suns. "I am High Executor Zirith," the creature thundered, its voice translated flawlessly into every human language. "Supreme Will of the Galactic Empire. By decree of the throne, your species has been judged destabilizing, unpredictable, and resistant to correction. As of this moment, humanity is at war with the Empire." A pause followed, long, deliberate, practiced over centuries of terrified audiences. "You will submit. Your fleets will be dismantled. Your worlds will be pacified. Resistance will be met with extinction." The transmission ended with a pulse of imperial sigils and a countdown clock. 72 hours. On Earth, the world blinked. In Chicago, a retired steelworker squinted at the screen in a sports bar and muttered, "That guy's got a hell of an ego." In Karachi, a delivery driver laughed and said, "Another scam call." In Berlin, a group of policy analysts argued whether the declaration violated 17 interstellar treaties that technically didn't exist yet. In Washington, Geneva, Moscow, and Beijing, military command centers acknowledged the signal, ran authentication protocols, confirmed it was real, and then went quiet. No panic broadcasts went out. No evacuation orders. No speeches. Just silence. The Galactic Empire did not understand silence. For 3,000 years, war had followed ritual. Fear came first. Then pleas. Then concessions. Entire civilizations bent themselves into knots begging the Empire to spare them. Humans did none of that. Within an hour, the countdown clock had been turned into a meme. Someone added background music. Someone else edited Ziritha's face onto a vintage Earth villain, complete with dramatic laughter. Stock markets dipped briefly, then stabilized. News panels argued whether this was a psyop, a prank, or a marketing stunt. In the Imperial War Chamber orbiting Varkesh Prime, confusion crept in. "Why are they not responding?" asked Fleet Marshal Corrin, his frills twitching. "They have acknowledged receipt," an aide replied. "No further communication. No mobilization? Minimal. Their fleets remain dispersed. Civilian traffic continues." High Executor Ziritha's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Then we remind them who we are." He gestured, and a forward task force, 20 battleships, escorts bristling with planet crackers, translated into human-controlled space. Their target was deliberately chosen, a quiet colonial world on the fringe. New Carthage. No major fleets. No strategic value beyond symbolism. A demonstration. On New Carthage, dawn had just broken. Families were heading to work. Children complained about school. A farmer paused to watch a strange ripple spread across the sky like oil on water. Then the heavens opened. Orbital bombardment came without warning. City shields, never designed to stop Imperial-grade weaponry, collapsed in seconds. Firestorms swept continents. Oceans boiled at the edges. Entire population centers vanished in white-hot silence. Within the first hour, 12 million humans were dead. The Varkesh commanders watched the feeds with professional detachment. This was how compliance was achieved. "Begin recording," one admiral said. "The surrender messages will come shortly." They did not. No pleas. No desperate transmissions. No human diplomats sobbing on open channels. Instead, hours later, a single tight-beam signal reached Imperial listening posts. It bypassed standard hailing frequencies and locked directly onto encrypted military bands, an intrusion so precise it made analysts uneasy. The screen resolved into the face of a human. Older. Gray hair cropped short. Lines carved deep by years that had not been kind. He wore no uniform, no insignia. Just tired eyes and a jaw set like stone. You destroyed a colony, the man said calmly. No shouting. No rage. Just fact. Yes, Sirith replied, appearing on the return channel. A demonstration. You will submit now. The human exhaled slowly, as if steadying himself. You misunderstand, he said. That wasn't a demonstration. Sirith leaned forward. Then what was it? The human's eyes hardened. That was you making a mistake. The channel cut. Within the Empire, analysts scrambled. Threat assessments spiked. Long-range sensors began picking up anomalies, small, at first. Merchant convoys missing scheduled check-ins. Data relays going dark. Patrol craft vanishing in supposedly secure corridors. Pirates? One officer suggested weakly. No, another replied. Pirates don't erase their signatures this cleanly. At the same time, something else began spreading through Imperial space. Human broadcasts. Not propaganda. Not threats. Footage. Raw, unfiltered images from New Carthage. Cities reduced to ash. Survivors clawing through rubble with bare hands. A woman screaming at the sky, demanding to know why no one came. The Empire tried to suppress the feeds. They failed. Humans rerouted them through civilian networks, black markets, entertainment channels. They let the galaxy see everything. Back on Earth, the silence finally broke. In a secure underground chamber, a group of human leaders sat around a plain table. No flags. No speeches. A general spoke first. Casualty projections? A civilian analyst replied, voice tight. If the Empire continues at current escalation rates, extinction level within 5 years. No one flinched. The gray-haired man from the transmission leaned forward. Then we don't let them continue. A younger officer hesitated. Sir, their fleet outnumbers us 10-1. The man nodded. Good. Good? Yes, he said. Means they'll never believe we'd fight like this. He tapped the table once. Wake up the old programs. Call the mercenaries. Dust off the weapons we promised never to use. Someone swallowed. And diplomacy? The man's mouth twisted, not quite a smile. We tried being polite, he said. They declared war on a Tuesday. Far from Earth, as the Empire prepared its next overwhelming strike, the first Varkesh supply convoy failed to arrive at its destination. Then another. Then another. No wreckage. No survivors. Just absence. And somewhere in the dark between stars, humanity finally stopped hardly caring. The Galactic Empire measured war in tonnage, fleet counts, and the number of stars dimmed by orbital fire. By every one of those metrics, humanity should have already been dead. And yet, nothing was going according to the models. The first missing supply convoy triggered irritation. The second raised concern. By the fifth disappearance, the Imperial Logistics Bureau quietly panicked. Entire flotillas carrying fuel, munitions, and replacement crews were simply gone, erased from reality without battle reports or distress signals. Fleet Marshal Corrin stood before a flickering tactical display, his claws flexing. Pirates cannot do this, he snarled. No known species has the coordination or stealth. An analyst hesitated. The humans might. Silence fell. The Empire had studied humanity, of course. They always did. Humans were categorized as industrial predators, aggressive expansionists, fractious politics, moderate technological sophistication. Dangerous in local conflicts, but laughably outmatched by a galactic hegemon. What the Empire had not studied, what it never bothered to quantify, was obsession. The first confirmed human strike came not at a battlefront, but in a system officially designated as safe. A Varkesh shipyard, 3 jumps behind the lines, where half-finished cruisers floated like larvae in steel wombs. Human vessels appeared without warning, emerging from hyperspace inside the debris ring, a maneuver Imperial doctrine deemed suicidal. The humans didn't slow down. They accelerated. Autonomous drones detached mid-burn, embedding themselves into hulls, scaffolds, fuel lines. The human ships themselves didn't linger. They passed through the yard like ghosts, engines screaming, taking fire without returning it. 30 seconds later, the drones woke up. Explosions chained through the shipyard in cascading fury. Fuel ignited. Reactor cores breached. Half-built cruisers tore themselves apart before they'd ever fired a shot. By the time Imperial reinforcements arrived, all that remained was molten wreckage and a single message pulsing across open channels. Logistics wins wars. The Empire retaliated immediately. Strike fleets scoured human space, burning outposts, glassing moons, chasing phantom contacts that vanished before engagement. They wanted a decisive battle. Humans refused to give them one. Instead, the attacks spread like a disease. Relay stations went dark. Navigation buoys fed false data. Automated defenses turned their guns inward after receiving perfectly forged command codes. "How are they inside our systems?" demanded High Executive Zirith, slamming his claw into the council table. "Our encryption is flawless." A cyber warfare priest spoke carefully. "Human code is inelegant, exalted one. Brutal. It does not seek perfection. It seeks function. And it adapts," Zirith hissed. "Then adapt faster." But adaptation takes time. Humans had already spent centuries learning how to fight enemies bigger than themselves, corporations, governments, nature itself. They didn't rely on elegant plans. They relied on redundancy, paranoia, and a deep cultural acceptance that things would go wrong. And when they did, humans improvised. On the edge of Imperial territory, a Varkesh patrol intercepted what appeared to be a damaged human freighter, drifting powerless. "Scan for traps," the patrol commander ordered. "No weapons signatures detected. Boarding party proceed." The boarding team never reported back. When the patrol ship docked to investigate, the freighter detonated, not explosively, but internally. Nanite swarms erupted, shredding machinery, chewing through armor, replicating as they went. By the time the patrol attempted to disengage, it was already dead. The freighter's black box transmitted one last message before burning out. Humans weaponize inconvenience. Across the galaxy, neutral species began to pay attention. They had watched the Empire crush civilizations with bored efficiency. They had learned to look away. But this was different. Humans weren't winning through brute force. They were winning through humiliation. A Varkesh admiral's flagship arrived at a rally point to find every other vessel waiting, engines cold, weapons offline. A human signal echoed across the fleet. "Gentlemen," a cheerful voice said, "you might want to reboot." Half the fleet never powered back up. On a fringe world under Imperial occupation, a human mercenary band struck a garrison not with artillery, but with broadcast towers. They hijacked every public channel, blasting footage of New Carthage's destruction alongside Imperial casualty lists. "You were told this was glorious," a human woman's voice said over the feed. "You were lied to." Riots followed within hours. Inside a dim operations center on Earth, the gray-haired man watched the data scroll by. A younger intelligence officer leaned close. "Sir, reports indicate at least 6 client species are considering open rebellion." The man nodded once. "Good. Isn't that destabilizing?" "That's the point." He turned to face the room. "The Empire runs on fear. Take that away, and it eats itself." A political advisor frowned. "And if they escalate?" "Planet killers. Extermination protocols." The man's eyes darkened. "Then we stop playing nice." That night, humanity escalated. A human fleet appeared at the edge of a heavily fortified Imperial system. They made no attempt to hide. They broadcast openly. "This is Captain Reyes of the UNS Dead Reckoning," the voice announced. "We're here about New Carthage." Imperial guns powered up. Dozens of ships locked on. Reyes continued unbothered. "You have 10 seconds to evacuate non-combatants." Laughter rippled through Imperial channels. 10, Reyes said. "Why would we?" 9. An officer interrupted. "Sir, their energy readings." 8. Those aren't weapon signatures. 7. Sir, they're overloading their own drives. 6. Panic crept into the Admiral's voice. What are they doing? 5. Captain, orders. 4. The human ships surged forward. 3. They didn't fire. 2. They rammed. Human vessels slammed into Imperial ships at relativistic speeds, antimatter cores detonating on impact. The resulting chain reaction tore through the formation like a hammer through glass. 1 second later, the system went dark. From the wreckage, a final transmission echoed, stripped of emotion. You wanted war, Reyes said. This is what humans do when we stop caring about winning and start caring about ending. As the Empire reeled, High Executive Zurith stared at casualty reports that made no sense. Losses too fast. Too deep. Too chaotic. For the first time in his long life, doubt crept in. These are not primitives, he whispered. Far away, on a quiet listening post, a Varkesh linguist replayed intercepted human chatter. Not battle cries. Not triumph. Jokes. Complaints. Arguments about coffee and sleep schedules. And beneath it all, grim, unshakable resolve. The linguist closed his eyes. The Empire had declared war on a species that treated apocalypse like a work problem. And humanity was just getting started. The Galactic Empire did not collapse all at once. It cracked. The fractures began at the edges, client states that stopped paying tribute, patrol fleets that suddenly required maintenance, governors who discovered inconvenient bureaucratic delays when imperial orders arrived. None of it looked like rebellion at first. It looked like incompetence. Humans understood incompetence. They cultivated it. Imperial command channels flooded with contradictory orders, forged and rerouted through human-made ghosts in the network. One fleet received simultaneous commands to advance, retreat, and hold position, each authenticated, each stamped with Imperial authority. When the Admiral hesitated, human minds bloomed in his formation like metal flowers. High Executive Zurith watched the strategic map degrade into chaos. Entire regions of space flickered from Imperial red to uncertain gray. This is impossible, he hissed. We rule by law. By order. A war philosopher, ancient and trembling, replied. And humans rule by exception. The Empire escalated. Planetary annihilation protocols were authorized for the first time in centuries. The intent was clear: terrify the galaxy back into obedience. If humans wanted to make the war ugly, the Empire would make it apocalyptic. The first target was not Earth. It was a neutral trade world that had allowed human refugees to pass through its ports. The bombardment began without warning. Orbital cities shattered. Atmosphere burned. Billions died in a single rotation. The Empire broadcast the destruction across all channels. This is the fate of those who aid humanity, Zurith proclaimed. Observe and remember. The galaxy observed. And then the humans responded. Not with rage. With receipts. Within hours, human intelligence dumps flooded every open network, classified Imperial documents, extermination orders, sterilization mandates, recordings of Imperial governors discussing genocide as a cost-saving measure. Names. Dates. Numbers. No editing. No spin. Just truth, raw and merciless. The myth of Imperial benevolence died overnight. On a dozen worlds, crowds tore down Imperial symbols. On others, client fleets mutinied mid-jump, their captains citing moral realignment, before turning their guns on former masters. An Imperial admiral defected publicly, his broadcast shaking with shame. They told us we were bringing order, he said. We were bringing graves. Zurith screamed at the feed until his attendants cut the sound. Meanwhile, humanity prepared something else, something the Empire could not comprehend. A fleet gathered at the edge of Varkesh space. Not large. Not impressive. Old hulls. Retrofits. Ships with names etched into their sides like epitaphs. Grudge, last call, still standing. Imperial analysts scoffed. Symbolic. They seek a final stand. They were wrong. The human fleet advanced directly toward a fortified Imperial nexus, a system bristling with defenses, layered shields, and enough firepower to erase stars. It was a killing field. The humans broadcast a single message. We're here to collect. Imperial guns opened fire. Human ships did not evade. They anchored. Gravitational spikes slammed into real space, locking the system's physics in place. Imperial warp drive screamed and failed. Shields flickered. "What is happening?" shouted a Varkesh commander. A human engineer answered calmly over open comms. "We weaponized your infrastructure." Then the stars themselves bent. Humans had seeded the system months earlier with devices disguised as sensor buoys, debris, even corpses of derelict ships. Each was a node. Each one a piece of a larger machine. They called it a lattice. When activated, the lattice twisted gravity, time dilation, and energy flow into a controlled nightmare. Imperial ships found themselves accelerating sideways, colliding with allies, weapons misfiring as targeting solutions collapsed. Human vessels moved through the chaos like predators who had memorized the terrain. "This violates every law of war," Zirith screamed. A human captain replied, dry as dust. "You should have read the fine print." The battle lasted 13 minutes. When it ended, the Imperial Nexus was gone, collapsed into a shimmering scar in space where physics would never quite behave again. From the wreckage, a single human transmission echoed across the galaxy. "We're done proving points." And still, that was not the cruelest blow. In a quiet data archive, far from the fighting, a conversation unfolded. A Varkesh linguist, task-assigned translator second class, had been intercepting human chatter for months. He expected hatred. Instead, he found gallows humor. Fatigue. Arguments about music playlists and coffee quality in the middle of combat. One channel repeated often. A human signals officer with a sharp tongue and a habit of complaining about his boots. "You ever notice," the human said during one exchange, "that your empire keeps calling us barbarians?" "Yes," the linguist replied carefully. "Funny thing about barbarians," the human continued. "They don't pretend this is noble." Silence followed. Then the linguist asked the question he'd been avoiding for weeks. "Why do you show the galaxy what you are doing? Why not hide it?" The human laughed softly. "Because if they're going to fear us, we want them to know exactly why." The linguist terminated the channel and sat in the dark for a long time. He had studied hundreds of species. None of them fought like this. The Empire had tried to dominate humanity with power. Humanity was dismantling it with memory, exposure, and consequences. And at the heart of Imperial space, High Executor Zirith finally understood the mistake. This was not a war for territory. It was a war for narrative. And the Empire was losing. The end of the Galactic Empire did not arrive with a surrender ceremony. There was no final treaty signed under ceremonial lights, no kneeling High Executor offering formal capitulation. Empires rarely end with dignity. They end with silence. The first sign was when Imperial command channels went dark, one by one, then all at once. No orders. No updates. Just empty bandwidth where authority used to live. The lattice scars left by human attacks disrupted hyperspace routes, cutting regions off from each other like severed limbs. Client worlds declared independence within days. Some did it publicly, tearing down Imperial banners and broadcasting defiant speeches. Others simply stopped answering calls. Fleets parked themselves over their homeworlds and powered down, weapons aimed inward rather than outward. High Executor Zirith made one final address. He appeared thinner, armor scorched, the skulls on his mantle cracked and blackened. Fires burned behind him in what had once been the heart of Imperial governance. "This ends now," he snarled. "Humans, you have made your point. Withdraw, and the Empire will." The broadcast cut. Not by human interference. By his own guards. Later reports would suggest Zirith never finished the sentence. Empires do not forgive failure. Humanity did not advance on Varkesh Prime. That terrified the galaxy more than conquest ever could. Instead, human fleets halted at the borders and began something unprecedented: leaving. They dismantled forward bases, opened humanitarian corridors, sent engineers, medics, and trauma specialists into war-ravaged systems, often alongside former enemies. A human general addressed a stunned galactic assembly, her voice steady, unapologetic. "We didn't come to rule you," she said. "We came to make sure you'd never be ruled like that again." A delegate stammered. "You could have taken everything." She nodded. "Yes. That's why we didn't." Across former Imperial space, trials began. Humans provided evidence but refused seats as judges. "This isn't our justice," they said. "It's yours." Some worlds chose mercy. Others chose vengeance. Humanity did not interfere. On Earth, the gray-haired man watched the war's aftermath from a quiet balcony overlooking a city that had never been bombed. A younger officer joined him. "Casualty estimates finalized," the officer said softly. "We lost, more than projected." The man closed his eyes. New Carthage still burned in his dreams. "Did it work?" he asked. "Yes," the officer replied. "The Empire is gone. The galaxy's changed." The man exhaled. "Good. Sir, history will call this a victory." He shook his head. History wasn't there. Years later, the galaxy learned a new rule. You did not threaten humanity. You did not posture. You did not assume disinterest meant weakness. Because the stories spread, of the day the Empire declared war and humanity barely looked up. Of the species that treated apocalypse like an administrative problem and solved it with patience, spite, and terrifying creativity. On a neutral world, in a bar built from salvaged Imperial steel, a human veteran sat beside a Varkesh linguist, now a civilian, now something else entirely. "Do they hate you?" the linguist asked quietly. The human considered the question. "Some do. Some always will." "And you?" the linguist asked. "Do you hate us?" The human took a slow drink. "No," he said. "Hate takes energy. We're tired." Outside, ships of 100 species crossed peaceful skies that had once burned. The galaxy had learned what happens when humanity stops caring about appearances, diplomacy, or reputation. When humanity hardly cares. It does not rage. It does not boast. It ends things.